Today we're going to talk about how to use function notation, right? It seems a little bit scary. Sometimes people look at it and they freak out and go, oh man, there's all this stuff going on. But I don't want you guys to freak out. Function notation is the same as using an equation, right? That's all it is. It's just a slightly different way that it's written down. But the math behind it is exactly the same as what you guys have been doing. So just a little bit of background on some of the function notation stuff here. Using that function notation, I wrote these things in here. This can be what function notation looks like. It's just the name of the function that comes first, and then in parentheses is usually just the variable or possible, variables, sometimes multiple, that are being used in the equation or in the function. And that's all that's happening, right? You can name it, whatever you want to, and then you just put the variables afterwards in parentheses. In this case, with functions, the parentheses does not mean multiply. It just means that's the numbers or the variables that we're going to be using, okay? Now, very often, so that we don't get big, long names of things, usually single letters are used to represent a function. So in here, I've got G, but, maybe you want, something that's, multiple things that start with the letter G. So in order to separate those, we use numbers as well. And we put those in what's called the subscript or down below. And we pronounce that as like G sub 1, right? Or if there was a 5, there would say, well, that's G sub 5. Whatever number is in the subscript, we say sub, and then whatever that number is. So we don't say that this is G1, we say that it's G sub 1 in that case. And then again, variable just after. And here's a lowercase g. And the thing that's important is that capital letters and lowercase letters are different equations. They're different functions, and that's what they are. Okay? So on the next page here, it's going to look really complicated, right? People start to freak out, but don't. It's just giving us a list of stuff, right? So here we have just a list of functions. Sometimes people freak out about that, but it's okay. We're not, we're just have a list of things. That's all it is, right? It's just a list of stuff that we can look up. So here for the example, we're just going to evaluate G of 8. That's how we would say that, G of 8. It does not mean we're multiplying by 8. In no way. All that means is we're going to use equation G, and we're going to plug in 8 into that equation. So just to identify that a little bit more, we're going to take this 8, okay, and let's make this thing transparent, and maybe we'll make it like blue, and we're going to take this value and we're going to plug it in for the G value over here. And that's what we're going to do. And then we're going to take that value and plug it in to this spot here. That's all that's going to be happening. So really, all that this is saying do is use equation G. We're going to use the number 8 in equation G. So we're going to do 8 plus 4. That's exactly what we're going to do here. So in this, we're going to do 8 plus 4, which, as you guys know, is 12. Okay, so it's, that's the complicatedness of this. Okay, now there are some things, that look a little bit different in here, and I'm going to go over those examples. But if this makes sense to you and you want to, jump right to the assignment, go ahead. That's perfectly fine. You can come back here and check those things out. Okay, so I'm just going to go through a couple other examples that might happen, right? So here's the second example. This says G1 of 2 and -5. That's what we're going to use. So all this is meaning to do, right? All that we're going to do here is we're going to take 2 in this case, right? Maybe we'll make this one red so we can track those different things. And we're going to take the number 2 and we're going to use equation G1. So we have 2 there. And let's see, let's make a different color. We'll make this one blue, I suppose. And we're going to make that one equation B. Okay, we're using G1. 2 is meaning X value, -5 is meaning our B value. And that's all we do in there. Okay, so I'm just going to grab these two so we know what's happening. I'm just going to move them over here. Okay, so we're just going to plug those into those separate spots. And then the only thing really in this, as with anything, we just have to keep track of those negatives. So in here, let's go in this place, move that down. So we'd have 2, notice there's a 2, and then it says times. So I'm going to use the star to represent time so I don't get it confused with an x. 2 times 2, because that's our x value, minus negative 5. Okay, that's what we're using because we're subtracting a negative 5. Right, that's what these things are doing here. Here's that 2 that we plugged in for the x. Here's that negative 5 we plugged in there. Okay? And then we just evaluate those things. Like that's all that there is. That's all that there is to it. 2 times 2 is 4. Minus negative 5 means plus 5. And that is equal to 9. That's it. All right, so there's our final answer. We have 9. We're all good to go, right? It's just plugging in those equations. All right. Last example that we'll go over, this one we just have to keep track of the order in which things go in. Sometimes people just jump in, they start throwing pieces in there. We got to make sure that the order is correct on here. So I'm going to grab these two guys here. You know, just again, maybe we'll have our 1, our negative 7, and we need also a different shape here as well. So I'm going to grab a different color on here. Maybe we'll make this one, I don't know, orange or something there. Now let's make it green. That'll be identifiable. Okay, so we're going to make this one green. So this one has 3 of them. So we've got a green spot. That's going to represent Z. Red is going to represent K. And blue is representing Q in this case because we're using T. So we're going to use equation T because it takes 3 numbers to do equation T. We have to be careful of the order. Some people just jump right in. Notice Z in this case is at the back of the equation back here. It's the absolute value of Z, but it's at the back of the equation. K is still in the middle right here. Yeah, that's fine. But Q is at the front of the equation. It's listed last here, but it is at the front of the equation. And sometimes that happens. It is nice when they go in the same order in the equation as they do in the list, but even if that happens, that's okay. We can still work that stuff out. Yeah. So in here, when we put our things in here, we have a 3 times Q, which in this case is negative 7. We have to be a little bit careful there. So times negative 7. Okay, so I'm just going to, use my parentheses. I get that that's a little confusing. Sometimes we use parentheses in our function notation. Sometimes we use parentheses in the equation. They mean a little bit different things where we're using those parentheses. But then we just go on here. So it's a plus 2 times K. So I'm going to put times K. There's K is 1. And then plus the absolute value of Z, which is 0. All right. So then we just work that stuff out. Okay. So just to identify where those things went, I'm sure you guys can work these things out. But the Z value, right, that was our green, red being our K, and this one, the blue here being Q. That's where we put that. Okay, just so you can see where those things went. I'll shorten this up so we can see the absolute value. And that's it. Okay, and then we just evaluate. 3 times negative 7, all right, that's negative 21, plus 2 times 1, plus 0, all right? So we can work that out, and that's negative 19 in there. Okay, and then we get all the way through. And that's how you work with function notation. Again, a lot of people think that it's scary because there's all these things going on. Boy, these equations look really, really complicated. But all it is it just tells you which equation to look up, and here's the numbers you plug into those specific spots, and then you just evaluate like normal. Yeah. If you guys have any other questions, there's a few, questions on the assignment down below. Let me know if you got any questions. Other than that, I'll see you guys later.